Good evening and welcome to CanHammer, your stop for Warhammer 40k from the Great White North. Today's episode is 249. We are very close to the big 250. There might be some missing numbers in there from many, many years ago, but
Listen, no one's going to go back and check. You can say whatever you want. It's episode 798.
Yeah. Today's show is going to be all about orcs, and we had a GT on the weekend we want to touch a little bit on as well. So, as usual, I'm your host, Chris, at CanHammer Chris on all social media, and I'm joined by my co-host.
Hey, it's Francois, and I've accidentally acquired another army.
Yeah, that happens. Maybe two, actually. And Logan is absent today. He's going to be absent for a while. He's just got some work stuff going on. So I know he will be dearly missed by our listeners, and we miss him as well. So, do what you got to do, Logan, and we'll see you back in a few weeks.
He's in Scotland drinking scotch. Like, screw him.
Yeah, screw him. Yeah. He should be recording drunk in the morning, hungover, and no. Okay, so we'll get started a little bit. I just want to talk a little bit about hobby progress because you've been working on some stuff. So take us through what you've been doing.
Painting so much, Chris. I don't know what's wrong with me, but the last few months, actually, a lot is wrong with me. Yes, correct. The last few months, I've painted probably 7,000 points of 3 different armies. I am on an absolute tear. The GSC project is slightly on hold. I painted a bunch of Blood Angels for the GT that we're going to talk about in a minute. And I am doing a lot of work on Orks as well. And let me tell you, Streaking Grime is magic. I painted yesterday 15 Storm Boys from primer to finished, minus spacing, in under 2 hours. With
Amazing.
Speed paints and Streaking Grime, and they look good. That's the shocking part. The 2 hour part isn't shocking. It's the fact that they look good at the end of that 2 hour. So Streaking Grime, let me quickly tell you how to use that thing because I am a convert now. You put it through your airbrush to coat the entire miniature. Make sure to wear a mask because it's an enamel. You don't want to breathe that in, and it will vaporize. So good mask, not a surgical mask. The respirator with the filters on the side. Please don't harm your lungs. And then you wipe it off with makeup sponges and white spirits, and it turns the miniature from looking ugly to looking perfect. There's some dark magic in there, and it's wonderful. You can do 15, 20, 30 models at a time and turn them into it's a very grim dark look. Obviously, it's not going to be clean bright. It's going to be kind of grimy and dark, but it's magical.
One of the things you did do is you did paint the Orks bright underneath of that.
Yes, correct.
I think that's if you go for a duller, you have to go bright if you're going to do something like that. So do you have to varnish them first or no?
No, I didn't. You have to be careful when you wipe off the excess to not rub the paint off. So just be gentle. You could varnish. I have not, and I don't think it's a necessity.
Okay. So same thing. So, Orks came out. I don't know if a lot of our newer listeners know, I'm actually historically known as an Ork player. They were my first army. And so, Ork book comes out and I'm like, sick. I want to play that. So I look and I'm like, man, I have a lot of boys. And we'll talk about that later.
First time we played years ago, you traumatized me with over 100 boys.
Yeah, that's my MO. And but all my boys have shootas, right? So I've been digging out. So I was like, okay, I got 120 boys with shootas, and I got to get 120 boys with Slugga Choppa. So I've been going through, and I was like, well, I don't want to repaint or rip their arms off because I already had 100 boys in my closet, in various states. So I've just been building and trying to get them ready to go. So yeah, we have a problem, both of us, and it's so.
I call it a solution. It's not a problem; it's a solution.
By this summer, I'm hoping to have basically 120 of both types of regular boys, and then we can look at the Beast Snagga stuff eventually. So that's cool. So yeah, we've been both hobbying away, but we'll move on to, you went to a GT this weekend at the Red Dragon. It's one of the monthly GTs, and you took Blood Angel. So what the hell possessed you to take Blood Angels?
Right. So as the listeners know, I've been doing a lot of Death Guard the last few months, mostly because I gaslit myself into thinking that it would be a good idea. Death Guard, don't get me wrong, are very good. They're a stable 10-10er for teams. It was an asset to our CanHammer teams to have it there. But it's very much not me. And we are planning an episode a little bit later about playstyles and what they mean. But my playstyle is very much an aggro. I'm going to ask all the questions and dare you to find the answers kind of playstyle. Whereas Death Guard is kind of the opposite of that. It's a much more passive because they're slow. You set up on the board and you wait and you answer the questions that your opponent gives you. Like, so simplifying, but that's mostly what it is. And while I did fine with Death Guard, like I can play it, it was not bringing me joy. So I decided to go to this GT, which actually I wasn't even that enthusiastic about post CHTT. You always have the post big event slump, and I was like, I don't know what to play. None of my armies really inspire me anymore. And I was talking to Tim, our friend Team Deetleaf, one night, and he said, "You know what you should play? You should play Blood Angels. That's a very you army." And I said, "Tim, you're a genius. I'm going to play Blood Angels." I had most of the army painted, minus some extra Death Company that I had to do up real quick. But I took the most aggressive Blood Angel list I could write. It's pure infantry except for one Rhino, 70 models total. Most of those with jump packs that move 12 inches. It was 10 Death Company with Limarties with jump packs, 5 with jump packs, 5 with jump packs, 5 on foot, 5 on foot. So if you're counting this 30 Death Company, mix up foot and jump pack.
32
one Rhino.
few maybe, but we'll see.
Well, we'll see. And then 10 Vanguard Veterans with a Captain and a Sanguinary Priest. Vanguard Veterans with Captain and Sang Priest go to Strength 8, AP2, 5 attacks each on the charge. And then they have a 4-up Invuln and a 5-up Feel No Pain from their Storm Shield and a Sang Priest. And then 10 Assault Intercessors. And then 5 scouts, and 5 infiltrators. And that was the list. So basically 70 angry Marines running at you across the table. And I spent the entire weekend doing that. And let me tell you, it was so much fun. After the weekend, Jeremy came up to me and said, I haven't seen you have this much fun in an event in a long time. It was amazing.
That's a good lesson for people, is like, even though like nobody forced you to play Death Guard, you wanted to,
I gaslit myself into doing. Yeah, I'm the only responsible here. Tim has been telling me for months not to do it, and I was like, nah, it's gonna be great.
Yeah, that's normal too. Like, we've all been there. We get in these slumps, or what I said, sluts. Wow, that's crazy. We get we get to these slumps, or like for example, me, Chaos Space Marines. I was in that same, where you're like, it's good, man. People are making it work, and I'm working on it. And you're like, but it just doesn't feel right for you. So it's good that you were like, I gave it a run. It goes on the shelf, and then I'll move on to this next one. So. No. So you showed up with Blood Angels. Take away, man. How'd the GT go? I couldn't make it to this one. I felt kind of sad.
But we have one every 6 weeks, so like it's not expected that you'll be at every one, although I usually am. 28 player GT, the usual suspects. Zach and Jeremy from Team Canada were there. Dan was playing. Will was there. So the usual crew of local killers that are at these events. And 5 rounds GT, 2 days. We get started. And it's going to why is my brain breaking here? It's going to be a fun one. I don't have like a huge expectation, but I'm like, this army is fun. It's good. If I get the right pairings, I think I can do pretty well. Round 1, I pair into a newer player with Leagues of Votan, Liam. Lovely guy. Doesn't play a ton, so a little bit inexperienced. And his League of Votan list was 2 Ekaton and a bunch of the Devastator guys that they have with Grav. So literally anti-synergetic to my army. He does not have a single gun that's good into me. That's not true. He had Terminators, but most of his points are devoted to killing vehicles, of which I have exactly 1, and it's a Rhino. So it's an extremely horrible matchup for him. So I won't talk about that game for too long. It was lovely, but it was quick. So that was a very quick 20-0. I just ran straight at him, and his guns just don't have the right profiles to stop me. And as soon as I touch him, he dies, because that army on the charge, let me tell you, Death Company, 40 attacks with Power Fists plus the characters on the big blob, and then the Van Vets and the Assault Marines, it's 50 attacks at AP2. Only damage 1, but still, you have access to a Lance lethal strat, and because you have captains and it's a battle tactics, you can do it twice. Whatever that army touches disappears so incredibly fast.
And it's good to
Round
have an easy round one like that because, like, especially you switched armies, you're painting like crazy. I think you had a test game or two,
I
but
had literally one game before the event
that,
with the list.
so it's kind of nice. I find like round one, easy match, just running through the rules, getting the
Mhm.
muscle memory down with like these stats, these stats, these stats. So that's
Yeah,
good.
so of
That's a good
course
way to
I've
start.
played a lot of Marines in my life, and I had played Death Company as recently as the World Championships of Warhammer, although I was playing them in the Salamanders detachment back then, because Suns hadn't been buffed yet. But yeah, it's nice to have like not having your hardest round one is generally nice at these
Yeah.
events. Round two, go into Steph and the Death Guard, borrowing the Death Guard from Dan. And what Dan had wasn't quite what Steph wanted to play, so it didn't really super match up well to my army. 3-player Brisk Crawlers and Mortarion does do some work, but not enough when you have 70 Marine bodies. So again, just kind of ran straight forward because the Death Guard's still semi-resilient. So that one was a 16-4. Lovely game. Steph is great. We play very often in these things. We end up pairing like quite regularly. And Steph is a good player. And so that was another fun game. But again, and this is going to be the theme of the weekend, very quick. Like all my games were over like 40 minutes, an hour, 2 hours in one instance before the round timer was up. There was a lot of walking around and asking other people how their games were going. This army is quick. Last round of the day, day one, I'm into Arlana. Arlana is a local Tau player. She's very good. But I don't think she understood what my army did very well because she went aggro into me turn one. At which point Jeremy walks past and looks at the board and goes, "Oh, you shouldn't have done that." Because what that let me do is springboard a charge. And I did something very smart, and I'm going to explain a little bit of charge phase tactics to the listeners. The problem with Tau, especially Arlana's list, is breachers kill me really, really efficiently. And she had 50 of them. So
Cool.
the challenge was trying to not die to breachers in that game. And what she had done was put a devilfish a little bit forward on an objective, and then 2 units of breachers just a little bit behind it, ready to clap back on the turn. She was expecting that I would charge the devilfish, and then she would kill my unit. I charged the devilfish, but I used charge phase shenanigans to block myself from basing and then charge straight forward so that half my unit could then pile into the breachers instead of the devilfish. And so I had 3 Van Vets into each 10 mana breachers, and 3 Van Vets is enough with Lance Lethal to kill 10 breachers. So I killed all the breachers, did not kill the devilfish, which was perfect because there were 10 more breachers inside and I didn't want them to fall out. So
Yeah.
that charge just won me the game right there, turn 2. It was another rather quick game. Although turn 1, when she goes first and moves everything forward towards me, I did have a bit of a uh-oh moment, like wondering what was going to happen. And then I realized, oh no, all that's happening is that all my charges are going to connect now.
Yep. And like really, even if you don't wipe the breachers, but you cripple them, that's good enough, right?
Yeah,
Just gets rid of those shots. And they can't fall back and shoot. So it's
No, exactly. Just tagging them is good enough. Killing 20 for free basically was a nice bonus. But that was definitely the moment in that game. Next day, round 4, is the hardest game of the weekend. It's against our friend and teammate Zach Como and his Tau. Now, Zach had a bit of a strange Tau list for that one. He wanted to take his Tiger Shark for one last spin, expecting that it's probably going to go the way of the Dodo, given what they did to Orc Forge World. And last hurrah for the Sibs. Thank God those things are gone. And so he took 3 Hammerheads, one of which was Long Strike, the Tiger Shark plane, 2 Blobs of Crisis, and that was basically the list. He had like maybe 2 units of infantry. It was a list that was designed to just shoot a lot and kill things, but does not have any board presence, basically. He had just come off beating Jeremy because Storm Ravens do not like triple Hammerhead.
Nope.
They die very quickly to that. So we
maybe he did
played
that for that, like just the crazy.
Oh, I believe
like,
he probably did. Yeah,
I bet you he came for Jeremy. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it makes sense. If you know there's going to be triple Storm Raven, it makes sense to stick some Hammerheads in your list.
Wait, he had 3 Storm Ravens. He didn't have 2. Jeremy?
2. Sorry, 2.
Oh, sorry. Okay, I was like, why did he change it? Crazy.
3 Hammerheads, 2 Storm Raven, 3 Hammerheads. The Tiger Shark was definitely, although it's for the points, it's surprisingly good. Actually, it's not actually a meme, but first time I met Zach, he was playing a Tiger Shark. He loves that model, so he wanted to bring it out of retirement for one last ride before
he's
perhaps
played 2 before. Like I think he's played 2. Yeah,
one of
times.
them is a piece of foam that he sculpted himself.
It looks good though. Yeah, like
Yeah. No, he put in the work. From a distance, you can't tell, but as soon as you lift it, it's very obvious. Anyway, so the key in that game was I needed to go first because he is very mobile, 18-inch moving crisis suits, and he also had three riptides. Sorry, so it's just like an absolute two riptides, two. It's an absolute nightmare of shooting, but if I go first, he gets to maybe shoot me for one turn and then he dies. And I went first. My scouts were deployed very aggro, so on one side I had scouts charge and tag on turn one, half of his army. And actually, the scouts killed the crisis suit, which was very amusing because Blood Angel scouts have 5 attacks at strength 6 each on the charge.
Yep, yes they do.
Yes, and the sergeant has a chainsword with AP1. So they killed the suit and tagged the suits, tetras, and a hammerhead, I believe, which completely freed that side of the board. So I had like 25 jump pack infantry completely safe, stage up very aggressively on that side of the board, which then let me turn 2 get a bunch of charges off. Again, I used charge phase shenanigans to multi-charge a Riptide and then kill it with 1 unit, so the second unit could then pile into the crisis suit that was 12 inches away from my unit, but because of the charge, I managed to go around, kill the target. Now they get to activate. What's closest to them is now the crisis suits. They're within 4, slam into them. And that's what ended that game. But the go first roll was huge there. If I go second, it's suddenly a very hard game. Hard to tell exactly what happens if I go second, but it's not good. So going first definitely helped me tremendously there. Finally, round 5, I go into Matthew Saluros and his Grey Knights. He's playing 2 blobs of, well, 1 blob of Terminators, 1 blob of Paladin, 3 Nemesis Dread Knight, 1 Grandmaster, 1 unit of strikes, 2 characters. It's he's got like 7 drops, 6 hammer units, but that's it, right? And the Grey Knight's shtick is that they teleport and they're fast, but my entire army is made of jump packs and move 12, so I don't really care. I again go first. I run up the bin board. It's table quarter deployment, search and destroy, so very good for me. I use infiltrators on one side to completely zone out his shenanigans. On the other side, I aggressively advance some scouts and 1 unit of Jump Pack Death Company. Everything else goes to the middle. And turn 2, I'm charging his home objective. And he tapped kind of top of 3, bottom of 2, something like that. He looked at the board and went, yeah, I can't win this.
Yeah, like if you could screen Grey Knights and get into them, it's like then he's just like teleporting in his own corner, and you're like, well, now I'm gonna try.
Yeah, he was in his back corner, but turn 2 I killed 2 Dread Knights, and then turn 3 I got the Paladins and 1 more Dread Knight, maybe even 2 more. It was rough. And then to just had insult to injury, he draws. Actually, we did sort of semi talk out, semi play round 3. He draws capture enemy outpost, goes to send Drago there. Drago activates his plus 3-inch charge to make the 9 a 6, fails it. CP reroll, fails it again, and that's when he went, you know what? Let's not even. Let's stop right there. Yeah. So yeah, I won the event with my stupid 70 infantry list. It was very fun.
Congratulations, man. That's awesome. I was so happy for you. Yeah, it felt good. I was like, yeah, go CanHammer.
Yeah, it's been a minute since I won a singles event. Well, a minute, like enough months that I can't remember when the last one was. We've won a lot of team events in the meantime, you and I together. But it's nice to like know that I still got it in singles when every once in a while.
Yeah, it feels good. Yeah, I know exactly how you feel.
But it was a great weekend. Everyone had fun. I want to shout out Jean Messon, who on day 1 showed up with a very questionably painted artillery pieces for his guard, and whom we made paint over lunch to get his battle ready points. Funniest thing I've ever seen at an event. Jean, go buy a pot of lead belcher and fix those artillery pieces, please.
So did he take the penalty in the early games and then remove the penalty, or no? We overlooked
what happened is we collectively looked at his artillery after round 1, which he had won convincingly, so the penalty didn't matter there. And we said, Jean, do you think this is battle ready? He looks back at us and says, yes. And then I think Jeremy proposed it, but we all very quickly jumped on it as being a great idea. Said, Jean, go buy a pot of lead belcher and a brush and go fix your artillery over lunch, and then you won't have to take a penalty for round 2.
That's pretty funny. Yeah. Okay. So it sounds good. Congratulations again. That's a big win. Feels good. And your ELO puts you back on top of the country.
That's what Jeremy tells me. I haven't checked, but yes, I believe I am back on top.
Well, I didn't check. Oh, I checked, but it wasn't updated. So anyway, we'll just go with it, and people could
Yes.
fact check us and complain, and we don't read it. So we'll move on to the orcs now. Like if if you're looking for a complete breakdown of the orc book, you're in the wrong place. Francois and I have been playing games. I've played a couple. I think you've played a couple as well, or
Hmm.
and so we're just going to talk about what we think's good, what our lists are good, and we're going to kind of keep it to that level. If you want to go through everything in detail, Ospas Tactics and a few other places do that. They got the books early, we did not. So just full disclosure, but I think we got some good
Yeah,
nuggets.
but now we've played with and against, and so we at least have seen it in action on the table, which hopefully means we have something interesting to say about it.
Hopefully, well, interesting is a relative term when it comes to orcs, I
It's
guess.
true.
So, what I guess for the most part, the army rule stayed the same with WoW, and it's a very powerful army-wide rule. So you're still getting your +1 strength and attack for one turn. You declare at the start of the battle round. Nothing really new there. And a 5+ invul, and you can advance and charge. So very standard. So a lot of your lists need to be built around this rule, I'd say, or rely on this rule. They did put 6 detachments in. The first one, and we'll go very high level here, is and for the ones that we're not playing, and then we'll go deep in the ones that we are playing. The first one is Warhorde. This is kind of your generic, just take
It's the index
it's
detachment.
anything you want. Yeah, you get sustained hits on all orcs, so it applies to everything mix and match. And then the rest of the detachments are very specific to like a type of orc or build, right? Is there anything exciting? Have you played any Warhordes yet?
No, I think people are so excited about the other detachments that are not really testing Warhorde right now, but I do think it's still strong. I think it's still a very good detachment. It's kind of a nice all-rounder. Also, it gets exploding hits, which makes the melee like very scary. Gaz in that detachment, especially with his new updated profile, sounds incredibly good. So
Yeah.
I think it's probably the most offensive detachment. If you want to do damage, I feel that's the one to go to, more so than the others.
But we haven't really played it, so we'll kind of leave it there.
Yeah.
Very generic. Like, it got Follow Me Lads, which is a really good enhancement it adds 2 inches to your move characteristic, so that's pretty spicy out of a battle wagon. And you're moving, 8 inches plus 3, 11 inches, so it gives you some good reach. Anything else in there that you want to touch on before we move on?
No, I think it's just a good all-rounder, and I'm sure people could win events with that detachment. It's just less exciting because it's not new.
Yeah, yeah, less specialized. And I think the orcs have always found that kind of weird place where it's like this detachment, we know what it does. It's like a mixed match orc list. It kind of tries to score. And so if you were playing orcs pre-book, this detachment gives you some boosts, but not really enough. It's almost like you're literally just playing your index list now.
With better
And
mega
so,
knobs and a better gas.
yeah, and I don't think those things actually make your army that much better, personally. So I would say it's kind of a B tier power level. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my opinion. That's why I don't really
That makes sense.
rate it.
Yeah.
They also created, so now we're getting into kind of more specialized. They did the Big Hunt, which is basically beast nagas and stuff like that. They get different abilities, like you get to reroll the charge. You can increase armor penetration by 1. But all in all, it's pretty standard, and I don't really like beast naga stuff. I never really have. I thought that was a mistake in the direction that they took the orc army with
Right.
them. So I don't know what your take is on
That's
that.
because you're a purist. Well, I'm going to be playing against it this afternoon, so I will have more to say about it after that game. But Phil is bringing a squig jail list. By that I mean a list that is designed to very quickly pin you in your zone with hard to kill pig riders and boss and squigosaur. There's an enhancement there to give one of them scouts. So if that list goes first, it can put you in jail in your deployment zone until you dig yourself out, by which time it might be too late. It's also a detachment that has access to a lot of mortals. Mortals on the charge. There's a strat. There's an ability, data sheet ability. There's grenades. There's tank shock. Like, you can do so many mortals with that detachment. I think I was quickly gaming a combo that could do a reliable 15 mortal wounds. It's CP intensive, but that is pretty nuts. When you think about it. So while it doesn't seem to be on the surface the most powerful of the detachments, there are a couple others we think are better. There is, I think, a lot of play to that detachment. And that's going to be a theme for the Orc book. Like, they did a great job with this book. The detachments are all fun, flavorful, and playable.
Yeah, it depends. Like if you were that kind of like, so the next one's the Cult of Speed. So if you were that guy, you had all the different, vehicles and
Mhm.
which I have a lot of, but I can't take most of them because I
Because
have
you have
too many.
9 of the same buggy.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Do you want to sell me some?
Yes, very much
Let's talk
so
later.
for a
Yes.
heavy discount. Yes. So basically, the Cult of Speed, you can advance, and you can advance and fall back and shoot basically with the whole army, which is nice when you have these buggies. You want to keep them mobile, you want to keep them shooting, which is very good. But I think like this edition, those buggies aren't going to get you the objectives that you want, and they probably aren't going to do the damage output that you want either, in my opinion. Right?
There,
So
there is some fun shenanigans you can do with this detachment. Again, I haven't played it, but I've looked at it a little bit. I was talking to Will at the event this weekend. Will is a huge Horde player. He's very enthusiastic. He wants to play a tournament with every single detachment in this book. That's how high he is on it. And we were talking about Cult of Speed, and there's some fun shenanigans you can do. You're going to have a fun time with Cult of Speed. It's, in my opinion, the weakest detachment in this book, but it's by no means weak, right? It's the weakest in the Ork book. It's still better than a lot of other detachments out there. Everything is relative, and the internal balance of this book is pretty good. So if you have a bunch of buggies and you want to play Cult of Speed, you will win games. You're not guaranteeing yourself a complete loss record with that detachment. It's still good.
yeah, and you're also stat checking people. Like, if somebody's coming and they have the inability to deal with the vehicles,
Yep.
you're going to stat check them. If they have the ability to deal with the vehicles, you're going to get stat checked, right?
Yeah,
So
I
it's
expect
one
to
of
see
those.
that one less, but still, like if you have a bunch of buggy and want to play them, do so. It's fun and it's still perfectly fine.
Yeah. And yeah, we're going quick through these as we mentioned before because we have two that we really want to talk about. Next one's the Dread Mob. I actually really like this one.
Until you found out that grot tanks weren't going to be a thing.
Yeah. So the theory is you take like killicans and you take grot tanks. Basically, there's the Dread Mob. Their rule is anytime you have a mech, orc walker, or grot vehicle, and they're selected to shoot, you roll a d6 until the end of the phase. You either get sustained hits, lethal hits, or you can improve the armor penetration by 2, which is really spicy when you're taking things like 24 grot tanks, which I ordered, and then they got legended.
They're
So you're
basing
like,
material now.
yeah, so I don't know what I'm going to do about that. I didn't get real ones. Oh, so never mind. It doesn't matter. And like honestly, the Killicans, they always seem kind of good on paper, and I'm curious if they'll actually transition well with this new book and the buffs that they get. But
I think, yeah, I
You
think they
so?
can be, but they're too slow, and especially on the types of terrain that we play on, WTC terrain, getting angles with them is going to be basically impossible. I think on a different terrain format, maybe there's play there for Killicans. The one thing I want to say about detachment is that it allows you to take grots as battle line, meaning if you wanted to, you could play 120 grots. Now, I think that's probably too many, but it's very funny. One thing you can do is play 5 by 10 and 1 by 20 with Zodgrod, and then have all the screening for your killer cans. So
Yeah.
if you want to play that detachment and like start with 18 killer cans, sure, but make sure you put plenty of aggressions in there and take advantage of that rule and all that screening. Because why are they OC2?
Yeah, that's a weird one. They're not. They're not. Yes. The thing is, though, with that, the way that I look at that is, I go, you could still take, and I know, like you're like, oh, it's Dread Mob. I got to take the kill. You can still take normal, essentially
Sure.
a normal orc
You can
army.
take boys, yeah. You can take
You're
Mega
just
Knobs. You probably
missing out on
should.
some stuff. Yeah, you probably still should. And so I guess,
in fact,
like,
if you take Mega Knobs and put a big mech in Mega Armor in there, it gets the mech keyword, and that unlocks a bunch of the strats. So the Mega Knobs are actually good in that attachment as well.
but you're generally not taking them with too many guns. So
No, but
it is what it is. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's go on to the two good ones. We just want to give you some context.
They're
we
all
might
good.
return
The
to
two
those in the
best
future.
ones.
The two best ones. We might return to those in the future and be like, "Hey, we were wrong. We're going to take all these killicans." I
We
do have a lot.
probably
of
are
killicans.
wrong.
My favorite one, and it just goes a lot on based on what I used to play, what I like to play, how I see the orcs playing, and that's the Green Tide. And this one basically gives you a 5+ invul save on boys units, so just the regular boys, not the beast naga, for the entire game. That's pretty significant. So you don't need a custom force field. You don't need to be in a bubble. You can, you're basically adding a third of the wounds because most things are AP2 nowadays, or
Mhm.
AP1 at least, and 6 up is what it is. And you're essentially adding a third of the wounds to all your units. And also, if you
And
have
you're
10 or
you're
more
not
models, you
reliant
reroll
on the
ones.
WA for a defensive buff. One of the big problems of the WA is sometimes you wanted to take it for the 5 up invuln, but then you've wasted it and you're not getting the offensive output. With this detachment, all your boys always have it, and so you can wait to turn it on until you really need the offense.
Now, I guess the downside to this detachment is the fact that in order to get value out of its rule, you're essentially looking at 100 to 120 boys.
Yes.
And that's it. Otherwise, it's not worth taking, in my opinion, because you're
Mhm.
not getting that value. But yeah, as you said, it's nice. So I've played a couple games of this, and it's really nice being able to be like, turn one, no wall. I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to absorb as much firepower as I can. You still hide your as much as you can, but so
Trying
this is
to
pretty
hide
cool.
120 boys is a little hard.
Oh yeah, and the awesome part about this one is that they also made all the enhancements and stratagems really favor boys.
Hmm.
And so one of the things that this list is really good at is doing fixed objectives because when you're running 120 boys, you can cleanse two objectives. You throw in a weird boy, you can teleport, and so you can really do homers and cleanse quite easily against
Yep.
most opponents. And like you don't have to waste that many resources and points to do so, and it's really hard for people to kind of knock you off. The other thing is that when you take boys with a chop a slugga, even if your opponent charges you or tries to tie you down, you can still do an action because you have
Yep.
pistols, right? So you're eligible to shoot. And a lot of things in this edition right now, there are units that can kill 20 boys. They're not really common in the meta. And if people are catering towards this Green Tide list, they're not going to be able to kill some of the larger Tyranid bugs or some of the vehicles or some of the tougher stuff that's out there.
Yeah,
So if you're
for
really
right now, this is very nicely counter meta. We'll see if Green Tide starts coming out of the woodwork. People will start bringing more Gladiator Reapers and things like that. So that can change quickly. But right now, you're right that the general gun profiles of the game don't match well into one wound T5, 5 up invulnerable rolling one models.
It's actually oppressive. I played against Tim Zeldar, and he was like, he couldn't wipe units, right? And that's a
Oh
big
yeah, no,
problem. And then you're still
Eldar
out
would
OCing
struggle
them.
into that. Yep.
And like, let's face it, boys are not bad in 20s. They sticky objectives. Like it's a lot. So
So
it's like even if I put my 20 boys on and you kill me, like let's say you just like nuke it with a shooting unit, that's still my objective for the most part. And if I have 4 or 5 boys left, that's like 10 OC, right?
and
So
you can regrow them with a strat as well.
yeah,
So yeah.
we will even get to that. So the enhancements are good too. So
Yep.
now I did say it, like if you have 10 or more models in a unit, you get to reroll ones to your saving throw. Everything in this book is sent, not everything, but most things in this detachment, if you have 10 or more models, you get a bonus, right?
It's
And
very
so
flavorful.
yeah, it all stacks, right? It's like, well, if I just take all these 20-man boy units, I get all the abilities. First one is Ferocious Show Off. And so basically it's for that model. You add 1 to their strength of melee weapons. If you have 10 or more models, you add 3. Not that good, but
If you have
whatever.
like the extra point laying around on a war boss, it can be very funny. But yeah.
Spoiler alert, you do not. For the most part. Maybe you're right. The next one's Brutal but Cunning. This one's pretty good. So basically, it's a CP on a 5 up, and you get +2 the result. So it's a 3 up if you have 10 or more models in the unit. This is great because this detachment lends itself to fixed, and so you can just start pumping those extra CP. You can also do it with Grots. Grots are on a 4+ on an objective. So if you stack this with some Grots, you can almost guarantee 5 CP a game.
But I think if you're tight on points, you probably just gamble on the Grot CP and don't take that. But I can see the appeal.
So that's what I've been doing, but there is like certain list points like when you get to where you're like, I can just take this, right?
Yeah.
But I like having CP regen in a fixed style army. Basically, Bloodthirst Belligerence. When you're leading a unit, you can reroll advance rolls made for that unit, and when it's 10 or more, you can reroll charge rolls. This one's very, very good because you can take it with essentially a weird boy, and then that weird boy in a 20-man boy unit later in the the game, when they're teleporting, you're now getting a free reroll charge, which means you can do it twice and you can reroll both charges, one with the CP, one with this.
Yeah.
So it's very spicy.
Keep in mind that the timing of the jump means that you can come in from reserves and then the jump, which means if you don't want to have all your boys on the table, you can have one unit with a shaman off the board. I don't know why I'm using the fantasy term. Off the board, come in turn 3, pop the +3 to charge strat, and just all of a sudden things get real spicy.
Yeah, it really allows you to, get into their deployment zone, screen somebody's deployment zone, and just control the board really well as well. The last one is the War Caller. I don't know if it's Raucous. I don't even know how to say that word.
Raucous.
Raucous. Okay, there you go. We got the English major here.
I'm a French speaker and a historian. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but you're in those soft skills. I live in tech. This one's really good. It basically, the bears, it's orc infantry model only, and the bears unit always counts as 10 or more models. And so this is great because you're like, well, I have abilities that if he's in a boys unit, but this is really spicy in that you can put it in like a mega knob unit. They count as 10 or more models, so they're rerolling ones to their saves. That's when you use this, and it's really good.
Yeah, and I am going to go ahead and guess that the GW writing department did not realize that was going to be a thing, because a 2-up armor rerolling 1 unit is absolutely insane and should not exist. But it does, because while the invuln part of this detachment is boys only, their reroll 1's part is all orcs, so it works on mega knobs.
Yeah, all orcs that are over 10
yes.
models. So that's really good. So all in all, it's like the enhancements, I think they're all usable.
Yep.
You'd only use 1 or 2, and I think you consistently used. If you could find 2 enhancements that always find their way into your list, I personally take the reroll charge and the always counting as 10 models. As I said, 1 in a mega knob and then 1 on a weird boy. That's what I like to do, and it seems to be pretty damn good. They have 6 strats, and they're all good.
Yes. Well, one of them is highly situational. 5 are good.
But yeah, they're all playable. First one is competitive streak. Basically, you get to reroll wounds of a 1, and if you have more than 10 models, you get to reroll all wounds. So that's spicy. As we saw in the mega knobs, you can give them power claws, so you get the extra attack instead of doing the buzzsaws. Then you get 30 attacks, and you can be like 1 CP, I'm rerolling all my wounds because I count as over 10. Even rerolling ones to wound on them is good in a lot of situations as well. And also on boys units, right? So when you're running 20 boys and you're hitting, if there's a war boss in those boys, they're hitting on 2s, or if they're no war boss, they're hitting on 3s, which is great, but they're low strength AP1. And low strength AP1 attacks, rerolling wounds, actually gets through a lot of units.
Yeah, the volume is going to start getting real gnarly there.
On the WA, it's 80. On not the WA, it's 60 attacks. That's spicy. It's spicy. The next one is Come On Lads. And so you can raise back D3+2 destroyed models. That's amazing. You can take objectives back. This is done in the command phase, so you can do it to score
before
objectives.
You score. Yeah.
Take objectives. And even you put one, this is crazy because normally it's like I'm used to Custodes where you bring back 1 model, it's OC2, and you maybe play that game. But if you roll that 5, that's 10 OC on that. That's really hard for your opponent to counter. Mm-hmm. They have to really take the objective and screen it perfectly, which then puts them out of position.
And generally, even because, so the way that we play anyway, I don't know if it's a WTC thing or a GW thing, but you have to place the new models in coherency with a model that was already there. But still, that you can be 2 inches off the objective and still plop a model on there.
Or 5.
Or, yes.
yeah.
But sometimes even just 1 is enough. You can't string, right? You can't do the old 9th edition Necron trick, but it's still incredibly powerful.
Yeah, I found it just against Eldar especially, I found it amazing because they have trouble getting more than 5 OC on an objective. And the minimum you can get for this is 3, which basically out OCs all Eldar units for the most part. Next one is Bulldozer Brutality. If you're within, basically you can fight 3 inches. So this allows, if a single character comes into your unit, you can end up getting a huge volume of attacks back on them. It's very situational, but I think it's amazing because a lot of people tend to do that, right? When you run a 20-man boy unit, they'll try to get in on like a weird angle with a single
So the third
survivable
row can
character.
get in, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna give kudos to GW there for writing that one correctly. It does not give you 3-inch engagement range, because if it did, very strange things would happen and the game would break. It says if your unit is in engagement range, you can fight within 3 inches. It's very specifically worded to actually work fine without creating any weird unintended shenanigans.
It works as if you read it from a normal perspective.
Yes,
It
not
does
from a
what you
rules
think
lawyer
it should,
perspective.
not from a rules lawyer. Yes, I agree with that one. Uh, Tide of Muscle. This one is amazing. It's amazing. Like, this is crazy.
Oh yeah, this is potentially one of the best stratagems in the game. Yeah.
I'm sorry, they're all 1 CP. That's why I'm not. Every single one of them's 1 CP. This one, you get to add the battle round to your charge distance. So when you're taking things like Weird Boys, like I've used this turn 1 for the 1 inch, right? Like,
Oh,
you're
yeah.
like, oh, I have a 7-inch charge turn 1, and this matters. I'll make it a 6 because that
Mhm.
changes the odds significantly. And then, of course, at the end of the game with a Weird Boy, you can be like, hey, I'm going to be last turn. I need to get in your zone, or I need to get you off an objective. I'm going to take
Bam,
the +5
plus
to the charge.
5. Yeah, it's ridiculous. And how often have you been in a late game situation where if you make the charge on this objective, you win, and if you don't, you lose? Like, that's actually not an uncommon thing to happen. And all of a sudden, you can go, well, I'm just going to +5 this charge now.
Especially with a lot of these missions, if you go second or first, like the last
the
turn
end game
really
scoring,
matters,
yeah.
and there's a huge end game scoring, and this like will allow you to increase your odds of getting significant end game. This is I can't say enough about it. Next one is bragging rights. This is the one that Francois was like, it's kind of crappy. Basically, if you have 2 units within 6 inches of each other for 1 CP, they both count as over 10 models, so they get all their abilities. I think it could be good.
So the reason I don't like it is that generally you would do that to get one of the extra benefits from one of the other strats. So you're spending a CP to spend a CP, which it feels like it's not a good investment of resources. But I'm sure that there's a couple edge cases where it could be good and could be helpful. I'm just saying it's the one you're going to use the least often.
I agree. Like I haven't used it yet, full disclosure, but I'm definitely like, there are times when you're like,
it's
I
one
need
of those.
rerolls to
If
wound, man.
the stars align, it's going to come into play. But it's also command phase, so you have to think ahead to needing it. Which very often you're going to be in the fight phase and go, oh, I wish I could reroll all wounds here, but my unit's below 10. Oh shit, it's too late. I haven't done the strat in my command phase. Right, so there's a few issues with that one. But you know what? 5 out of 6 is great.
Yep, and this just the other thing is, I think we got too excited when in. All these strats only apply to boys units, right? So as we said earlier,
yes,
basically you're only taking boys. Like this detachment's like you just take as many boys as you can.
Yeah. By the way, you said the real wounds on Mega Knobs. I didn't catch it at the time, but you can't do that. They're not a boys unit. You said take the claws on Mega Knobs and real wounds. That doesn't work.
Oh yeah, okay. So I take Buzz. I've been playing with Buzzsaws anyway. So good catch. Yes, you're right. You cannot. It's only boys. I got excited. Go get them. This one's I think it's pretty good as well.
Pretty good.
It's really good.
It's incredibly powerful.
So when you're shot, after your opponent resolves their attacks, so I did play this wrong once, and then the second time we played it correctly. You get shot, you can basically move d6 inches and make contact with enemy units. If you have 10 or more models, you move 6.
Yeah, it's a better blood surge, basically, for a CP, not automatically, but it's incredibly powerful because it means that people can't take the chance of just plinking a couple of models off you because all of a sudden your unit is slamming 6 inches forward, potentially into engagement. It's just the threat of having it makes your opponent play very differently. You don't even need to use that stratagem for it to have an impact on the game, which tells you how strong it is.
It was interesting because I was playing against Tim Zeldar, and he was like, he had to keep all his units beyond 6, or else you would just touch them, or he'd have to bait with a different unit, and that just adding that shenanigans to the movement phase, and then when they're 6 off, it affects how they get on the objective, and it's a big deal. It's a really big deal. And you can move anyway, even if you don't make contacts. You can even take an objective if you're moving towards the closest enemy. So it's really spicy. This build, like, basically you're going to start with 5 to 6 units of 20 boys. Personally, I've been liking to run 2 weird boys. You could fit 3 in if you really wanted to.
I think the third one is superfluous. I would even argue that sometimes perhaps
cheap, though.
1 is enough. Well, yeah, but
I like 2. Personally, I like 2.
Okay,
My list
1 or
of
2, but
2.
definitely at least 1, and probably not 3.
Because you do roll that one. You do roll that one.
You do, yeah.
And so, yeah, so you take 5 to 6 units of 20 boys. That's the auto include if you're taking this detachment. Two weird boys is the sweet spot for me. I've been running pain boys. I've ran with and without pain boys. I like them. Having a 5 up, 5 up means that when your units are on the objective, they stay there and you end up
Yeah.
scoring more points. I know some people argue, well, just take more boys, but then you're just
You're
moving
already
more
at the max
boys.
number of boys anyway,
Yeah.
probably. And
Yeah.
and sure, the pain boy at 70 is like at the edge of what I would consider worth it, but you have to think about it more than in pure math terms. This is something that a lot of players do wrong, in my opinion, is they do the math and they think in terms of points efficiency. But that's not how the game is played.
Nope.
And so sometimes that pain boy saving you just 2 extra boys would be worth it, even though he's 70 points, because that has flipped an objective, right? So think about these math breakpoints in as more than just math. They're also often, even if it's not quote unquote worth it, it's going to have a big impact on the game. Just like when people trade, often people will ask me, how many points is this unit? Like they're trying to decide if it's a quote unquote good trade in their head. And that is the worst possible way you can think about it. I will often throw away an expensive unit to kill a cheap one just because of the impact it will have the next turn.
Yep.
Not this turn, right? And so just as you're playing, try to keep these things in mind. I have come around on Pain Boys. I wasn't sure at first, but I think now that I would always play at least 2 for those crucial units you want to put out early, and 3 sounds reasonable as well.
I like 3 just because it's like it gives you the option too to just sit on 3 objectives and be like, you got to really commit. Yeah, I like them for all those reasons. The war bosses also go really well in this detachment. They give you +1 to hit. The pain boy has a power claw. The knob and the unit has a power claw, so they're hitting on 4s, 3 attacks each, 4 on the wall. So if you put a war boss in, now your power claws are hitting on 3s. Now your boys are hitting on 2s. You have a stratagem to reroll wounds, and so now a boys unit of 20 with a war boss, pain boy, like they're actually going through pretty elite infantry. Or
yeah,
at least
if you
crippling
don't
it.
have a war boss, the unit can be a little anemic. AP1 in a world where 2 up saves with AOC exist is kind of, it feels bad sometimes, but the war boss gives them that little bit of extra oomph.
Yeah. And back on the pain boys too, sometimes it's nice to run 3 pain boys and not 20 boys if you're worried about clock and or playing and finishing your game. It's probably more important.
Yeah.
So right now, yeah, that's what I'm running. Battle wagons also go really well in this detachment because you can put 2 characters, which you can join as long as one's a war boss, into a boys unit. You put them in a battle wagon. It gives you reach and protection. I've been running 1. I could see the argument for 2, but I find them a little bit too pricey for 2.
Yeah, they're a little bit on the edge. If you're running 2, I wrote a list with 2 just as a thought experiment, and you have to start cutting into those word boys and those feel no pains. Like you start have to cut characters to fit the second one in.
Or you drop the Mega Knob. So right now I'm running 1 unit of Mega Knobs with a Mega Knob War Boss so that he gets the reroll 1s to his save. I give them the Buzzsaw so they reroll wounds innately. So that's why maybe I fucked up that strat, but it doesn't matter. And
at current point levels, I think the Mega Knobs are worth it, especially because 2 up rolling 1s is hilarious. 30 points is way too cheap for Mega Knobs. Even though I have now 18 Mega Knobs, because I'm a broken human being. I think they're too cheap, and they probably should emergency patch that up to like 35 or 40, because that 30, the data sheet is not okay.
Yeah, they survive. They don't hit as hard. They get a 4+, feel no pain for 1 turn. I put them in a truck, and then I like 2 units of Grots and as many Storm Boys as you can fit in. Storm Boys are literally there for turn 1 objectives. So if you're taking a fixed list, cleanse and homers, you need to cleanse and homers turn 1. The Storm Boys allow you to do that.
Reach the middle.
Yeah, they can move their 12 and get it. So that's what I do. So I run 50 boys. I run all the characters in the world. 1 battle wagon, 1 truck with Mega Knobs, 2 units of Grots, and I can only fit 1 unit of Storm Boys in. It's not quite enough, but because that's the one downside is none of the Ork weapons are assault, so you can't advance and do actions.
Yeah.
And I found the games that I wasn't doing cleanse homers turn 1. Because basically,
you have to line up, because you have a truck, so you need to line up your truck to go do it. But then the truck is full of Mega Knobs, so sometimes you don't want to show it. It's an interesting puzzle. I think you probably need to find a way to fit in that second unit of Storm Boys.
And that battle wagon, you don't want to be putting that on an objective. Usually turn 1, and in the WTC tables, it can't really navigate. So. Cool.
You have to. I think there's with a lot of the Ork lists. We're going to talk about Bully Boys now, and I'll expand more on that. But I think it's important that you get those like little fast scoring units in your list and not just rely on what the detachment is good at. Warbikers are very good for their points. Also, so Stormboys, Warbikers, get some of those in your list.
Yeah, you need them, and then it gives you the option to just get up to, was it 95 points, and just by doing very little, actually,
Yeah.
if they can't table you. So we'll move on to the other good detachment. I'll
Bully
hand it over to
Boys!
Francois because that's what he's been
Yeah.
playing. So spoiler it, I've been playing Green Tide. He's playing this.
I will play Green Tide this afternoon as well, though we're doing a bunch of testing on Thursdays at the Dragon. But yeah, Bully Boys is the elite detachment, the Ork Stodes detachment. I've heard it described that as, because it's the one where you survive. Basically, Meganobs get a 4-up Feel No Pain in the Wa, and that detachment gets 2 turns of Wa for Knobs, Meganobs, and Warboss units. Keep in mind that if you attach a Warboss to a unit, it gets the Warboss keyword, and the Beastnaga bosses and boss on Squigs have the Warboss keyword, so actually that detachment is wider than people think. People immediately go to Max Knobs and Mega Knobs with that detachment. I think that's a mistake. Max or near max Mega Knobs, sure, because that data sheet is broken beyond belief. Sub Knobs, okay, sure, because all the strats are tied to Knobs and Mega Knobs. But you can do silly things like put a boss on Squigosaur in a unit of pigs, and then suddenly that gets 2 turns of Wa. Like, how good is that? You're still getting a lot out of the detachment, even if you're not using the quote-unquote detachment units. Very quickly, the enhancements are, again, all pretty good and pretty flavorful. We have one that gives your unit the Deep Strike ability, which is great, because even though they're Terminators, they're discount Terminators, and Meganobs do not natively have Deep Strike. So you need to give it to them. You do that by attaching a Warboss and Mega Armor with the enhancement to the unit, and suddenly you have a cute little ingress play that you can make. The Big Gob is also very good. Basically, in the beginning of the fight phase, you select one enemy unit in engagement range of the bearer, not the bearer's unit. People are going to get that wrong a lot. And then that unit takes a Battle Shock test at -1. Incredibly strong, because it basically turns off people's defensive strats against you. So that one kind of maybe flies under the radar a little bit, because people don't immediately see the impact it can have on a game. But charging let's imagine a unit that has access to -1 damage. You charge it, you Battle Shock them, all of a sudden they can't -1 damage, and your entire army is basically damaged too, so you've just doubled your output by having that enhancement. Very good. The biggest boss, +2 to the bearer's wound characteristic. That's really, if you have the points, it's probably the weakest one of the lot. And finally, Ed Stompa. It's an infantry war boss, and you can give it. Each time the bearer makes an attack that targets a unit that is below starting strength, reroll a wound roll of 1. If that unit is below half strength, you can reroll the wound roll instead. Again, on the weaker side, but if you have the point, it can make one of your war bosses much killier. The spicy sauce, though, is definitely in the stratagems. All of these are key to the Knobs or Mega Knobs keywords, so they only work on Knobs and Mega Knobs. They're not keyed to war bosses. None of them, I don't believe. I'm just checking. No, they're not. So that won't work with the combo I explained earlier, where you're getting Wa turns on different units by attaching a war boss to them, but they're still very strong. We have one that lets you reroll hit rolls of 1, and if the Wa is active, all hit rolls. Very strong on Mega Knobs that hit on 4 base or 3 with a War Boss. Juices your output a lot for a CP. Then we have one called Crushing Impact that is basically mortals on the charge. It lets your Knobs and Mega Knobs do tank shock, which is very funny. And potentially very powerful. Like a unit of 10 Knobs with that in the Wa turn will basically get you 5 mortal wounds, which is extremely strong. You can combo that with grenades, with tank shock, and all of a sudden you're doing a ton of mortals on demand. Too Arrogant to Die. That one is a defensive or reactive strat, rather. It's a reactive fight on death. It's on a 5+, but during the Wa turn, it's on a 3+. Again, extremely strong if you're facing another combat army. My personal favorite is Cut Him Down, though. Still 1 CP. These are all 1 CP. And it basically means that when someone is falling back from a Knobs or Mega Knobs unit from your army, they have to take a Desperate Escape test. And if the Wa is active, subtract 1 from the Desperate Escape, meaning they're losing a model on a 1, 2, or a 3. If you have a powerful unit that's trying to fall back, they're losing half their models on a dice roll. Very, very strong. And there's no restriction. That works on everything, which is very funny. Which means if a knight tries to fall back from you on a 1, 2, or a 3, it dies. Which I think is very, very funny. Next, we have always looking for a fight. This one lets you consolidate D3 plus 3 instead of 3, and 6 if the wall is active. That's very good because you hit a screen, you clear it, pop that strat, and then you can consolidate 6 inches into what's behind it. It makes screening your army much, much harder, if not impossible. And finally, we have an Armor of Contempt strat against shooting only for knobs or mega knobs. Obviously, when you start at a 2-up save and you can be in cover and you have access to that, it makes your mega knobs incredibly obnoxious to kill in shooting. A very good suit of strats. Obviously, they're all meant to support your mega knob units, which is going to be the core of that list. You're always going to start with 3 units of mega knobs, either 5s with a character to put in a truck, 6 naked to put in a truck. I could see that list being played without too many characters, to be honest. Yes, the characters juice the output, but a character is the same points as 3 mega knobs. Sometimes maybe you just want to take 6 and not attach a character. You're going to want at least 1 more boss in mega armor, maybe 2, maybe 3, because they juice the offensive output quite a bit. The big mech is cute, but he's expensive. He does let you res a model, which is very nice until you realize that he's 90 points, and so he needs to res 3 to get his points back. And I know I said not to think about that too much. And yes, situationally, just resing 1 at a key moment in the game is worth it. But then you're also making the offensive output of your unit worse compared to a war boss. So if you're playing a big mech, I would play at most 1 for that 1 unit that you really want to live. And then after that, couple knob units, probably a good idea. But don't make the mistake of just auto-populating max knobs and max mega knobs, because that would be all your points. You're going to need to play the mission with this list because it's slow. Trucks can sort of do
OC
it
too, right? That's the other
very low OC. Yeah, because they're all OC1.
Bringing back a mega knob, like OC1, it's very tough to switch an objective with that, but
yeah. So I actually like a couple units of 20 boys with war bosses in that detachment, because the war boss gives them access to the second turn of the war, which is very strong, and it gives you OC. And then fill in some storm boys, some war bikers, just to have the speed to reach out, go touch like small skirmishing units, go fight scouts in the corner, go do your missions, because you're probably going to be playing tactical with this one. So you do need those key fast moving units to add in. So don't just go 30 knobs and 18 mega knobs, because that's all your points, and you're going to lose if you do that. Yes, the data sheets are strong. It's going to hit hard. It's going to survive, but you're not going to be able to score the points.
Yeah, you can do things like sprinkling trucks and battle wagons. I like the knobs of the war boss because they essentially get the modern transhuman on it, but they still die. And that's the one thing I found with the mega knobs is they don't kill as much as you think they're going to kill.
No, they're relatively low volume for what they are.
And but they survive and they grind, right? So I agree with you. You need definitely.
What's very funny though is once your 2 turns of war are over, they die surprisingly quickly. The difference between having a 4 feel no pain and not is night and day.
And the interesting part is, like, if you take the big mech, as you said, you bring back a guy, but like what I find is they either just get like nuked or they don't. So it's like they're not like grinding away too much, right? Maybe a little bit for a couple turns. So I like the war boss personally, especially with the double wall. The war boss goes to damage 3 in mega armor, so he's definitely worth it for them. So that's cool. Anything else about the bully boys or?
No, I think a lot of people are going to play that because it's a lot more accessible than painting 120 boys, and it is strong. I think the Green Tide is probably a little bit stronger, but again, it depends what you're playing into. Like, especially if with New Tau, like basically legal now, if they all tech to 1 million SMS and 1,000 shots of burst cannons and stuff, maybe that pairs really well into Green Tide and less so into Bully Boys. So we need to see where the meta is going to settle.
Yeah. So anyway, that was a good one. Like, I know that we went really high level there, but that's the 2 detachments and army lists that we're playing. So hopefully that helps you on the tabletop if you're curious. And of course, we'll be reporting more in the coming weeks because I think we're both giving these orcs a good run.
We're playing games this week, yeah.
Yeah, so, and it's really exciting. But all in all, I think the codex is fantastic. Whoever designed it.
Whoever wrote that, kudos. The balance is great, other than mega knobs are too cheap. Please fix that.
Maybe. See, you're on that train. I'm on the train of like mega knobs are on the edge. And if they win up 2 big points, they're not worth it.
I think they need to be 35, if I'm honest. That's where I would put
I can
them.
see that.
People who say they should be 50 are trolling. That's not right. That would kill them entirely.
Yeah, they don't hit that hard, right? So it's tough.
At 35 or 40, I would still take some. But the problem is now you would take a unit in every single detachment, and that tells you they're too cheap.
Yeah, I agree. Yes. And the one thing about orcs you got to watch out for is kind of the final thought is like it's really easy to take a lot of characters and then it makes you a trap for assassinate, and that's something that we've been discussing a lot of is that okay? Is that not okay, right? And we're not there yet, but it is a character heavy army in my opinion, but that could just be my style. So
no, I think you're right.
But anyway, thanks for listening, guys. It was a great episode, and I guess we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Wow.
That was bad. That was a bad wah, but yeah, I like it.
All right, cheers, people. Bye-bye.
Cheers.